trying to read the Matthew Henry exposition, and he seems to think that it was a song that was written after some sort of victory. The way it is talking about, uh, now he's talking about the powerful warriors who could not stand up, but it starts on a tone of praise, saying God is well known in Judah. In Israel, he's a household name. Household name. That's how the Message version says it. The Amplified says, in Judah, God is known and renowned. Renowned. His name is highly praised and is great in Israel. In Salem also is his tabernacle, and his dwelling place is in Zion. Yeah, and talks about where he broke the bows, flashing arrows, the shield, the sword, the weapons of war. And it is interesting because Salem is where the temple is, but it's not where the field of battle is. But we can see very well that the writer of this song seems to see that victories are worked in the presence of God, that victories are worked in the temple, that victories that are acquired in the battlefield are worked in the temple. So he goes on and talks about how God is glorious and excellent on the mountains of prayer. He goes on to talk about how the mighty could not even lift their arm, and talks about all these great victories of God. I don't know what 76 verse 10 says. Surely the wrath of man shall praise you, the remainder of wrath shall you restrain, and guard your arm yourself with it. That one, it just confused me. I couldn't get to the bottom of it. The NIV says, surely your wrath against mankind brings you praise, and the survivors of your wrath are restrained. As if to say that the survivors of those who have not died in the breath of his nostrils, cannot even say anything after that. They are dumbfounded. I think that's what it says. That's something I'm still looking up. I would really pose it as a question to the table. What we think that verse 10 of chapter of the 76th Psalm seems to say. But however, it also talks about making your vows to the Lord and fulfilling them. This is an important thing, fulfilling your vows, the vows you made to God, especially because God is everlasting. If you made a vow to man, that man can die, and then that promise goes with him. If you only made it to him, in only his hearing. But now, if you make a vow to God, who is everlasting, how then will you be saved from from the cords of that promise that you made? And then it says in verse 12, closing the chapter, saying, he breaks the spirit of rulers, he is feared by the kings of the earth. So basically, a praise psalm exalting God and remembering his victories and telling of his great works, and recalling to mind how he has overcome, how he's the victory. And it seems to me as if a song sung on a day of victory, sung after probably one of those wars that were won in David's time, because you see it's a song of Asaph. So that is how I can talk about 76. I'm really keeping it short because we have started late. Psalm 77 is talking about is more melancholic, because the writer starts out, by the way, also an Asaph song, uh, but it was, I think, dedicated to a certain uh, worship leader called I forget what the name was. Was it I need to yeah, Jedusum, for Jedusum of Asaph. It seems that Jedusum is was one of the leaders in worship, and it was for him to organize. But when we go into that psalm, it seems to be more melancholic. And it says, I cried out to God for help. I cried out to God to hear me. When I look at it, it looks as though the psalmist has overcome this pain. It looks as though he has got past this tumultuous time of his life. And he said, when I was in distress, I sought the Lord at night. I stretched out untiring hands. I would not be comforted. I remembered you, O God, and I groaned. I meditated, and my spirit grew faint. This man is remembering how the times were tough and how he called upon God. And he says, verse 6 says, I remembered my songs in the night. My heart meditated, and my spirit asked. Sometimes you just look back at times past, and you just remember how sad, how crushing situations were. And in that time, he tells us that he called to God, and he asked him this. He says, will the Lord reject forever? That's verse 7. Will he never show his favor again? Has his unfailing love vanished forever? Has his promise failed for all time? Has God forgotten to be merciful? Has he in anger withheld his compassion? So in that, I can see that in that sad time and in that really crashing moment, he did not, he kept close to God. He kept in prayer. He did not keep away. He did not just uh, just despair and just, of course, these tears were cried in the presence of the Lord. These tears were cried before God, and it just lends a leaf of how we ought to 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 behave ourselves in times of trouble. And it seems as though also this is not exactly, it may be, it looks as though it's a personal, these are personal troubles, but as if when I was reading, I saw as if they may not only have been personal troubles. I'm seeing how the psalmist is so concerned, even to the level of it being personal, about the discomfort of of the nation, of the of maybe now I should be saying church, of of the trouble that the church is going through in these days. We should be talking about church. And then he remembers the deeds of the Lord. He remembers his miracles, and he says, "With your mighty arm, you redeemed your people, the descendants of Jacob and Joseph." So maybe this is what, maybe this is, and this is something that we can discuss. It looks as though it was a personal. On one side, it looks as though it was, these were personal troubles, but he was calling on communal victories, on corporate victories, to be encouraged in his troubles. Or it might have been that these um, corporate sorrows that they were facing had brought him so much so much stress, and to the point that he felt as if it was now personal pain, and he called out to God, and he could not sleep because of this state of the nation, because of the state in which his nation was. And but then the good thing is that at the end, he's calling, he's finding rest. We do not see that we do not see, of course we see that probably he has overcome his sad time, but that is not expressly said in this psalm. But he ends by calling on those victories. He ends the chapter by saying, but then I remembered your good works. So I'm saying something that sometimes when you are in times of trouble, the end is not so much in your disease getting healed. The end is not so much in making that $1 million that you need. Not so much in finishing that project. But sometimes what God is saying is, I am bigger than that. I have done this, I have done that. I do not see him saying, but then God, you pulled me out of that pit. But then God, you dried my tears. But now you have saved me. No, that is not said expressly. Maybe it can be implied by saying, when I was, huh? But we do not see that he has now elevated him. No, 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 we just see him now instead, and this is what brings his relief. This is how he gets above those sorrows, by remembering the works. It says the clouds, he says, you are the God who performs miracles. You display your power among the peoples. With your mighty arm, you redeemed your people, the descendants of Jacob. That's verse 15. The waters saw you, God. The waters saw you and breathed. The very depths were convulsed. Verse 6, that's verse 16. 17 says, the clouds poured down water. The heavens resounded with thunder. Your arrows flashed back and forth. Your thunder was heard in the whirlwind. Your lightning lit up the world. The earth trembled and quaked. Your path led through the sea, your way through the mighty waters, though your footprints were not seen. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Now, and basically, I draw a conclusion from the psalm that says, when I was when I was sad because of something that was happening to me, or maybe something that was happening to us, what happened? How did I get out of there? I did not get out of there by you completing the project for me or changing the situation for me. No, no, no. I got out of that situation by remembering your works. I can realize that this psalm doesn't talk about the carnal end of the matter. It talks about him overcoming his sorrow by remembering. I've already said a lot. We have almost lost half our time. So I'll open up the table. I can see uh, there's other four other people. I don't know if there's five. Damali could be lurking in the shadows, but I think I can open up the table. Um, I think I should open up the table to Mr. Mutumi, who I found, but somehow I think his network disturbed him and left. Mr. Mutumi, please, how did you find 76 and 77, sir?
Hi guys. Yes, it was a nice portion to read. As you've summarized, thank you so much for the summary, Patrick. Um, the part which was interesting to me was 77 from verse 16 to 20. First thing to note, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but um, Asaph seems to um, what's the word? Revere the time of getting out of Egypt. I don't know what revelation he got, but if you notice, most of his songs, he talks about those days of when God delivered the children of Israel out of Egypt. And he likes to bring those themes and bring that awesome power into remembrance. And truly, in case you did not know, um, a greater than Moses, that's Jesus, came. But from, I think, from the time of Moses to Jesus, Moses reigned supreme when it comes to miracles and the mighty working of God. I don't think you guys can think of anyone. Maybe Elijah, but even Elijah wasn't on this level of Moses. But I was reading this and it got me in that this picture I'm assuming, understanding, is from that time when Moses and the children of Israel were at the Red Sea and God parts the sea for them to pass. But there's a way that um, he brings it out. There's this revelation that it wasn't just about the sea parting. I don't know if you guys see this, but it was like God has appeared. And there's an appearance that when God comes into a situation, like Patrick, how you said, if a scenario is so, you're so low, you're so down, like at that point, the children of Israel were so down, and um, they were about to be killed. Like this is, I don't know, maybe they were high, then they were down. Because they were high, they're like, well, slaves were now free, which is something that I don't know in history. When have you ever seen slaves being set free? Because even up to now in America, those guys are still saying they're slaves. But anyway, um, and so they're free, they're happy, and now they see the armies of Pharaoh. These are slaves. They are not equipped with any weapons to defend themselves. And on top of that, um, they have gone on bad terms because you remember how they left. So they were so down. I don't know, maybe I don't want to compare, but it's very hard to go lower than this in life. You are first put up, then you're taken back down. That's one of the worst lows you can get. So can be in distress, like the children of Israel were in so much distress. But the ways of God are holy, and God is really great. So when He shows up, it is not even just solving your problem that, oh, you're crossing the Red Sea, but it is like it's like using a nuclear bomb to kill a house fly. The waters, the way that He brings this revelation that the waters withered, that that sea was just convulsing, that in the skies there was thunder, there was flashes, and even now the earth was quaking. Um, and then just like a shepherd leads a flock of sheep, because to lead sheep you have to have like an environment which is so, can I say, peaceful. Otherwise, the sheep will not be led properly. But just imagine all this is happening in the surroundings, and yet the sheep and the shepherd leading the sheep, it is peaceful, it is well. So that was an amazing ending to this 77, because of course, like Patrick, you are saying, it starts off with this kind of low and distressed, and um really, by the time I have not, maybe you guys have, but I've never cried for a whole night. So by the time you reach that level of crying for a whole night, it's something that's really down on your heart. And when God comes to show up for you, He really does show up, because yeah, His ways are holy. That was mainly what I wanted to share. Um, Ivan, please, you can share next.
Yeah. You say diver.
So you want the amplified of verse. You are radiant with light. Ah, sorry, that is not the amplified. The amplified says, "Glorious and excellent are you from the mountains of prey, splendid and majestic, more than the everlasting mountains." Seems to be saying that the mountains of prayer are the everlasting mountains.
NIV says you're radiant with light and no, you're radiant with light, more majestic than mountains rich with game.
The lyrics, the lyrics, my friend. It wasn't meant to be on. Uh, okay, let me look at the lyrics here. Okay. Hey, you want me to sing, eh? Yeah, I don't agree with some lines, but it's okay. It's your song. You are more glorious than the mountains of praise. You are more powerful than the rulers of the earth. You are more than the mountains of praise. You are more than the rulers of the earth. You are more beautiful. That sounds like you are victorious. You are more beautiful than the rising of the earth. You are more excellent and greatly to be praised. You are more than the rising of the sun. You are more and greatly to be praised. I like the chorus. I think we should change. You are more glory. It sounds like you are victor. Anyway. Yeah, that's the thing. I noticed that it was different. The NIV says, verse 10, it says, surely your wrath against mankind brings you praise, and the survivors of your wrath are restrained. As if to say that, yeah. Mm, mm. I, I just a moment. I find 10 to be, with the Amplified says, surely the wrath of man shall praise you. The remainder of wrath shall you restrain and guard your arm yourself with it. And guard, the remainder of wrath shall you restrain and guard and arm yourself with it. As in, he can, if if he sees that it's going beyond what he wants to do, it's easy for him to restrain his wrath and just, and just keep it at bay and arm yourself with it. It's interesting. That's what the Amplified says on the second part of that verse.
Hello, everyone. Hope everyone is fine. Um, I think Patrick shared a lot of what I would say. Patrick, you shared almost everything. But for Psalm 76, to me it is more of a praise. It's praising God for who He is. Yeah, it's praising God for who He is. Verses 5 of 76, the valiant lie plundered, they sleep their last sleep. Not one of the warriors can lift his hands. At your rebuke, O God of Jacob, both horse and chariot lie still. It's just talking about how great God is. At his rebuke, as in nothing can stand, nothing can go against him. It's just, I don't know. This is one verse I just read and be like, Selah, stop and think and meditate, because it's just too much. It just feels too much for me. And That verse you guys are talking about, the one of verse 10, surely your wrath against mankind brings you praise. I'm reading from NIV. And the survivors of your wrath are restrained. For me, I'm thinking it's like during the times of battle when God would come through for his children. Okay, yeah, you mentioned like that example of in the wilderness, but also I would think like during those other times when God would come through for his children, sometimes he would let he would let a lot of people be destroyed. And he would, I think it would leave the children of God speechless. Like it would leave the remnant, the ones who are there, who are left, they would be speechless because of the great works that God does. Even when thousands upon thousands come upon them, God is able to stop them. Yeah, that's my thinking. And then in verse chapter 77, talks of how he cried out to God for help and the Lord heard him. And mm, in verse 12, as he was calling out to God, as his heart was heavy and he was calling out to God, in verse 12 he says, I'll consider all your works and meditate on all your mighty deeds. Your ways, O God, are holy. When he starts talking about how great God is, it's like all these, I don't know. When he starts from here up, he says, I cried out to the Lord for help. I cried out to God to hear me. When I was in distress, I sought the Lord at night. I stretched out untiring hands. I would not be comforted. And he goes on, and he's down. It feels like he's downcast, like he's heavy laden. But then after he turns his meditation on God's mighty works, and when he starts meditating upon God's mighty works, it's like all these things all vanish. It's like immediately he gets his victory as he's meditating on God's works. It just reminds me that a lot of times when you're going through some difficult things, all it takes all it takes is for you to meditate on the work of God. All it takes is for you to meditate on the victories that God has brought for you in the past, for you to come out of that situation. Like when you see what God has done beforehand in my own life, when I consider what God has done, when I consider what he has done, and then I look at this mountain that is before me, I'm like, no, the God who brought me this far cannot fail me. Like he hasn't brought me this far to fail me. So this is always something I love to do. Like when I'm going through challenges, I love looking back and seeing the things that God did for me in the past. And when I do that, my spirit is lifted. And yeah, I'm not going to go further than that. Is it Leo? Leo? I don't think Leo has shared yet. So
Yes, thank you, Claire. Yes, thank you, Claire. Thank you for everyone who has shared. Um, Thank you, Ivan, for the song. I thought it was moo, like the cow is moo, not moo. But that's in the past. Um, for my sharing, yeah, I will also, I think, maybe echo what everyone else has said. My impression about these two psalms is worship. Jesus tells the Samaritan woman, the Samaritan woman, yeah, but the time is coming, and indeed has already come, where the people that worship God will neither worship in this mountain or that mountain. For God is seeking true worshippers who will worship Him in spirit and in truth. Asaph amazes me in the way he writes his psalms. In that, first of all, he magnifies God. Joseph mentioned that he likes talking about uh, the deliverance from Egypt. And once he mentioned it, I also noticed it because it's amazing that all these years later, this is still stuck in Asaph's head. That despite the tears, despite the hopeless situation, I think it's Patrick who mentioned that Asaph is not out of the woods in Psalm 77. This is similar to Psalm 73. It doesn't seem that the problem goes away, but his focus shifts away. And imagine he has to remember a time so far, far, far back when God did something so marvelous and so magnificent for him to bring himself to comfort that God is great despite the situation. So for me, what I learned from Asaph and these two psalms is that attitude of worship. I like how he begins the 76th psalm that God is renowned in Judah. As in, he just comes out of the blue and just says, God is a big guy. God is a great guy. He's a good God. He's big. In Judah, nothing. As in Judah, everybody knows him. He doesn't need introduction. He's God. And I think this is an attitude I would like to adopt in my worship of God. That God is not um, God is not great because of what he does. Though it could be, in our perspective, one of the things that make him great. But God is great because simply he is God. And I think that is something that we need to settle in our hearts and establish. Why? Because our adversary, the devil, seeks the same honor and the same worship, which is supposed to be going to God. So, in our worship of God or in our view of who God is, it's important to put this distinction and settle it once and for all in our hearts and not have the greatness of God attributed only to the things that we have seen, but have it established that God is God and he is great simply because he is God and that is his nature, that is who he is. So even in the times when the response doesn't seem to be coming, in the times when he is punishing, he is great. In the times when he is binding, he is great. In the times when he is delivering, he is great. In the time when he is silent, he is great. This is my pick from these two psalms. So it's just a reminder of how we should worship God in that sincerity and that truth. So I think I'll hand over back to Patrick. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo, for that. The only thing I can talk about now maybe is if there are prayer requests down that among us, that we bring them forth. Anyone here with a prayer request?